Welcome to Transformative Principal, where I help you stop putting out fires and start leading. I am your host, Jethro Jones. You can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Okay, welcome to Transformative Principal. This is episode 523, and we are continuing our coaching conversations with Eric. And make sure you go back and check out the rest of these. We've got episode 501, 506, 510, 514, and 519. That's quite a lot that we've done so far, Eric. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is how you helped a student compose a better email to you. Can we share that on the podcast or not?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. This was awesome.
So, it was a couple of weeks ago, and you saw kind of the draft. So correct me if I'm wrong. I got what I would call a pretty nasty email from a student.
Yeah.
And I really honestly didn't know what they were talking about, but they were, typing in all caps and what are you gonna do to fix this? And didn't have a greeting or a salutation. And I also hadn't talked to them about this issue in school. So I was kind of baffled and a little bit just disappointed. So when that's happened before, I think about I had a college professor. This must have been like the year email was invented. But she told me, she said, if you ever email a professor, you better start with dear professor or doctor and, be nice, be kind and respectful, and finish with a salutation. Otherwise, I won't read your emails and I won't help you. So I try and be a nicer version of that for students that I've worked with that send short emails or just kind of sloppy emails. And I used your better email at jethrojones.com tool that you had shared that will rewrite emails or compose emails based on, bulleted lists. So I took the email from the student, I sent it to Better Email, and it came back like exactly how you would want an email from a student. It was professional, well-written, greeting, salutation, and just put a nicer positive tone, instead of I can't figure this out, it said I could use help finding a solution to this problem. So
Yeah.
I shared that with her, both the rewritten email that your program wrote and also the address. And I said, hey, honestly, if you want to like get out frustration when you're emailing teachers or principals or friends, send it to this first, and it'll kind of be your nice translator and rewrite it for you.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know. I had just started playing with your new email program, and I thought, what a great use. Really, if you're mad, you could type a mad email, but send it to that, have it rewritten, and then probably
Yeah.
go a little smoother if you.
Yeah. So if it's okay, can I share the response? How it was written exactly by
Yeah.
the AI?
Yep.
So as you mentioned, the initial email was very disrespectful. Very obviously the student was upset. And it created a new email that said, Dear Eric Makelky, I'm having difficulty connecting to the internet with my Chromebook, and I understand that you are not providing hotspots anymore. I am writing to ask what you may be able to do to help me complete my homework without having to purchase a hotspot. I would appreciate your prompt response. Like, that is solution oriented, it is focused, it is respectful, and I just love how that worked out. I do like review these as they come in to make sure that they're like sounding good and that they're not getting, being awful.
Mm-hmm.
And that one came in and I was like, this is gold. I mean, it's
Yep.
beautiful because you're right. So many times I've heard principals and teachers say that they write a draft email and then they just throw it in the trash. And that's not really helpful. She obviously has a problem, and communicating about problems is not bad, but if you do it in the right way, it's actually a respectful, positive thing that can actually help the situation. So what was her response when you shared this with her? Was she like, okay, whatever, Mr. Makelky, or was she like cool about it? Like, what was the reaction?
honestly, she was kind of shocked and in awe
Uh-huh.
because I tried to explain she wasn't familiar with Chat GPT or some of the AI stuff that's been in the news. So I'm like, this is just a way to, rewrite emails using some technology. And when it came back and she saw it, she didn't know what to say. Like
Yeah.
it was so well written and still, made the points she was trying to make. I think it took her some time to process like, wow, that would have been way nicer to send a principal than what I
Yeah.
typed out.
That's good.
So,
Well, I'm curious to hear how that goes with her in the future. And I think that it was just such a beautiful example. So if you want to see what this tool is, go to the show notes or go to writebetter.com. That's BETTR. There's no second E.com, writebetter.com. And but the link is in the show notes called Write Better Emails. And this is really like just me practicing on something and trying something new, and I didn't know how it was going to go or what it would look like, and I've shared it with a few people here and there, um, and I've gotten some good stuff back. The important thing is that people are writing like whole emails, and really you just need to give it bullet points and it'll do the rest for you. And if the bullet points are clear, then it'll do a really good job. If the bullet points are not very clear, then it'll just guess and will guess poorly. So, don't write the whole email, but don't just say, two things and then move on. So,
noticed
anyway,
have you noticed I've been using it for my weekly
mm-hmm.
staff memo?
Yeah. How is that going for you?
Well, it saves me a ton of time. I just put bullet points of what I want to include throughout the week in that Thursday memo. And then, there's been a few things where I didn't have clear enough bullet points where I've gone in and fixed it, but that that has been as well written, if not better, than I would compose myself, and
Yeah.
has saved me a lot of time.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? I mean, I don't think that AI can do all of our work for us, but I do think that it can. What I keep telling people is it helps you start with a first draft. And if you think about it that way, then it's actually incredibly helpful. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. All right. Well, today you had mentioned that you want to talk about how to prioritize problems. So give me some context around that and what are you thinking?
Yeah. When we got off the last coaching session, just thinking about like one of the struggles that I'm having right now is keeping a focus. So if you come in on a Monday, the first day of school, at the start of a school year, and said, all right, these are the top 3 priorities that we want to focus on, improve, hang our hat on, whatever, I find myself shifting. And I know that'll happen sometimes as you learn more, you're going to have to change your plan. But I find myself spending a lot of time bouncing between different things and not enough time on the key, most important, really what should be my priorities at school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Were you in the mastermind when we read the book, The One Thing?
No.
Okay. So that is we're coming back to that book. We read it several years ago. It was probably before you got in. And it's really powerful. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, and
Okay.
Gary Keller of Keller Williams fame. And they consistently ask the question, what is the one thing that you could do such that by doing it would make everything else easier or unnecessary? And the question that you're asking is in the schema of this book is how do you decide what that one thing is that you really should be focusing on, and then how do you make sure that you do it every day? So in your experience, what are the things that are pulling you in different directions from what you think you should be focusing on in your school?
Well, the biggest thing, like if I was to have one thing, is getting in classrooms, watching teachers teach, watching students learn, being proactive, being visible, having positive interactions with staff and students. There's a lot of things that pull you away from that. Some of them, are requirements when certain things happen, like certain meetings or student situations, parent situations, staff situations, you have to kind of reshift your priorities, and they're important, but that also continues with, like trying to have a focus on one of our priorities is improving the schedule for next year. How do we create the master schedule? What goes into that? And it's a ton of work that we have to keep chipping away at, but I find that we get like distracted or disrupted by, oh, well, don't forget we got to do this for state testing coming up, or this for graduation coming up. And all those things are important and need to happen. But I just find myself constantly shifting things up and down, like, well, all right, today this is going to be the priority. And by the end of the day, it's like, is it even in the top 10 list?
Mm.
And maybe some of that is just I need to be okay with that and not let that frustrate me. But
Yeah. So how long did it take you at your previous school to to feel confident in doing your one thing every single day? Or did you
well,
ever get there? Maybe you
yeah,
didn't
I
get there.
did. I did. I would say I had an advantage because I had been in the system, in the school, in the district, and really in that building for
Mm.
over a decade. So as like the building principal, it was a matter of maybe a month. Like by that first month of school, you kind of figure out how to prioritize things and be realistic with what you expect. And I think that's why a new building and a new district has been such a struggle, is you have your priorities, but then you find out things you didn't know. And it's like, oh, I wonder if that should be a priority, because there's some things that we need to focus on, and probably some that we can let go or say, hey, we're not going to get to it. It's not going to be a priority. It's going to be a down the road type of thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say about a month, having been real familiar with the school.
Yeah. So each year within a month, you've got your routine set and you're ready to go, right?
Yep.
Um, so what do you think about the idea that maybe your priority is not the right thing for the season that you're in right now?
I think that's probably true, and why I get frustrated. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very open to that possibility. In fact, I'd say it's more than a possibility.
Yeah. With that being said, what do you think should be the priority then, um, for you, if not getting into classrooms?
Well, thinking about like this time of year, getting prepared and organized and communicate state testing, like that's a lot of work, planning wise, and with students and with staff and with parents. But at the same time, this is the season that we have to lay the groundwork for next year's scheduling, which is a separate, thing. And then you also have graduation that's going to require a lot of planning, attention to detail, communication. Um, and then I'd say the fourth one is like staffing for next year. So if you have any vacancies or expect any, posting vacancies, recruiting, interviewing, reviewing applications, scheduling interviews, those are kind of the four big ones right now.
Mhm. Yeah. So those are all like ta- excuse me, those are all tasks that need to be accomplished, right?
Hmm.
And so your the way that I'm hearing that is this is my to-do list, right? And are your priorities different than your to-do list, or are they the same thing?
Well, like with the schedule, there's a lot of things that we could improve for kids and for staff if we put in the time to do the schedule a certain way. So the priority would be like, hey, next year we are going to have kids scheduled in the right classes and classes balanced and teacher schedules balanced. That's kind of the priority. That would go a long ways to improving things at our school and solving a lot of problems. And then the task is, okay, what do we have to do before next year when we create the schedule? Does that make sense? Or am I
Uh,
just sticking to a task?
uh, I mean, it sounds like you're hitting at something that is a bigger thing than a task. Like you have a vision for what kind of a school you want to have next year, and scheduling plays a role in that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I think my question there is, what are the things that are more important than a task that should be your priority? Like, I think, let me back up a second. I think getting into classrooms should definitely be a priority, but you're not getting into classrooms for the sake of getting into classrooms, right? There's a deeper purpose there. So, what is the deeper purpose to you being in classrooms every day?
To see teachers teach and get to know teachers and see students learn and have, positive interactions outside of the office with students.
Mm-hmm. So, if I can summarize what you just said, your goal of getting into classrooms every day is to create and measure what the culture of your school is by building relationships, by giving people positive experiences, right?
Yeah.
So, it's not about getting into classrooms and physically being there. It's about getting into classrooms and seeing how people are interacting, seeing how the things you're trying to do are working, that kind of thing. Is that fair, or did I put words in your mouth?
Nope, that's fair.
So, with these other things, you mentioned state testing, next year scheduling, graduation, staffing for next year. Those are all things to do. What is the deeper purpose behind those things that you're trying to accomplish?
I guess it would come down to trying to improve our school or make sure that, students and staff have good experiences. The
Okay.
graduation is kind of like the culminating, student experience.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what is the one thing that you could do to make to make all of those things easier?
I'm not sure. You, you got any ideas?
Yeah. I mean, of course I do. I've
Te-
got tons of ideas.
Tell me, I got my pen. I'll take notes. I'm not sure because I feel like I'm kind of bouncing between them. So if there's something common there, I just haven't put that together.
Yeah. Well, I think that you have an idea within you and you just don't know how to articulate it yet. And I'm saying this because I know you and we've
Hmm.
spent a lot of time together, and I know what's in your heart and what you're trying to do for your school. And your your overwhelm with this new position and feeling like there's all these different things that are pulling you in different directions, I think is because you haven't been able to clearly articulate what it is that you're really trying to do. And so let's take state testing for just as the first one you mentioned, the first one that's on your mind right now. So, what is your bigger purpose behind state testing? What is it that you're trying to see from that?
Just seeing that our students give their best effort and that the data that comes from that, whether you agree or not, is used to measure and compare our school. And I want it to reflect the efforts of teachers and students.
Yeah. Okay. And so, what is one thing that you could do to help it reflect that it would actually be meaningful, useful data?
Probably articulate that more and communicate that more with
Mm-hmm.
staff, with students, with parents.
Yeah. So that could be one thing. Another thing that you could do to make it more accurately reflect what's going on is be prepared for it, right?
Hmm.
And that's the thing that you mentioned, that you want to get prepared for it. And so by being organized and having things in place for when that time comes, then it's going to more accurately reflect what's going on. And the reality is that decisions are made based on that. And so it's good to have that information be as accurate as possible. Also, if you know your kids are doing great things, you want that to be reflected and to show up so that their good work is being recognized. And so being organized around it is definitely important. Is that one of your main priorities as a school principal?
No,
Why not?
even though it is important, I don't put a ton of stock in it. To me, it's not really like a make or a break thing. I think if you were going to look at like what makes or breaks a great school, that wouldn't be top three.
Yeah,
We want students to learn at high levels, but it doesn't really come down to one test on one day.
exactly. So while it's important and while you want it to reflect well on you, you also don't think that it's the be all and end all,
Right.
right? And so getting at the thing that will influence the be all and end all, that's really where we want to put our real priority. So you had this pretty dialed in at your last school, don't you think?
Yeah, it just came from our 3 goals that we stuck to every year so that staff
Mhm.
knew and students knew and parents knew.
Yeah. And so why is that not translating here yet?
Some of it is me just trying to learn as I go and finding a balance between, continuing the good things that have happened in our school, but also not being afraid to change some things that need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when I first took this job, I enjoyed, you and I have talked about, and we did that podcast episode a while ago about having like school-wide goals. But what I liked about this district is they have district goals, and then those are broken down at the building level, some of which, being high school, junior, senior high school, really come from our building, like graduation rates and activities. And so I liked how the goals were already set. Like we didn't have to come up with what's important, what are we going to measure, what are we going to prioritize. That was already done for us. We're trying to make that meaningful and find ways like, okay, our graduation rate came out in the newspaper last week. It was 85%. Well, that wasn't meeting our goal as a district. So what can we do to improve that? And we have a lot of goals. There's attendance, student behavior, a professional development goal for staff, graduation rate, activities participation. There's at least 5 off the top of my head. Um, oh, and accountability rating. So that would be like test scores and all those different indicators. So there's 6.
And for those of you listening and not watching, because this is just audio, Eric literally looked over to the left of his computer and saw what the goals were, which I think is a very important thing that you have your goals there in front of you, that you could glance at them and see what they are. That's really important. So I'm hearing something in what you're saying that I'm not I'm not sure that you have uh, totally reconciled, but that you hinted at. You don't know everything that goes on in the district because you're new to the district, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so your your focus, which has been successful in the past, is not translating here, partially because you don't know everything about the district like you knew everything about the district in your previous district.
Sure.
And so what if your one thing was to learn something about the district every single day? What do you think would change if your goal was to learn something about how the district works, what's important to the district, and that was your one thing every day?
Well, it would help me feel more confident knowing what I know and what I don't know, kind of easing that learning gap, I guess, going from like brand new, you don't know anything, to feeling a little more comfortable with how things work. I haven't thought of that being a goal. I'd say most days, whether I wanted to or not, I've learned at least one thing. Like this morning, that our school nurse was in here and she's like, all right, let's review the the school nurse kind of absence or send kid home policy. I'm like, yeah, I've seen it. I know we have one. I don't remember what's on it. So things like that happen just because I think I ask questions like, okay, where does that come from? Why do we do it that way? But I haven't thought about it as being kind of the one thing.
So how does that change now that you hear it? How does that change what you're thinking about the rest of the things that you need to get done?
Well, it'd probably help me relax a little bit and not worry,
Yeah.
not stress so much about, what I don't know about those different things. If I was just more focused on like, okay, every day I'm going to learn something new about that, and slowly over time that's going to add up, and you're not worried about finding problems or hearing about problems or seeing things that you feel like you should have known but you didn't because you never thought to ask or look or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So would that also help you in your what I think is really your real one thing, which is uh, improving and maintaining a positive culture in your school?
I think so. I think it would. I don't know. That's not as like urgent as I sometimes make my goals and priorities. It would kind of force me to like slow down in my mind what that's going to look like and how I'm going to do it, which is not normal for me, but it probably would be good.
Yeah.
It probably would be good for me.
Not normal, but not necessarily a bad thing either, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm taking you down this path is because you are driven, you're ambitious, you want your school to be the best in the state, and I know that you work hard at doing that. And especially going into a new district and a new school, there's so many things for you to learn that it can and you want the same things that you had in your previous school to be happening today, right? And part of you is frustrated that those things aren't happening. Did I understand correctly, or did I put words in your
Yeah.
mouth?
No, absolutely.
So if the thing that made you able to make those changes and get to a comfortable point in your previous district were your knowledge of the system and how things worked. And because you knew how things worked, you knew how to get the things done that you wanted to do. You don't have that context here and you don't have that experience here. And so you need to create that so that you can then figure out how to get things done. So that when you want the state testing to be organized, you know who the person is that you go to make that happen. You know who the person at the district is that you have to go to make sure you have all the resources you need for that, and you know which teachers to talk to get those things done. And you all of that existed in your previous district, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm intentionally shortening this. Like I could have asked you all those questions and had you bring those out, but these are all things that I already know about you, which is why I'm able to like get to the point so quickly in this short conversation. And this matters because when you're in this situation, if you don't know what you don't know or you can't see it, it makes it really difficult for you to embrace the things that you need to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, from my outside perspective, I would say if you focused on learning something new every day, you would fulfill your priority, which is learning something new, and it would also make a lot of other things easier because the thing that you would learn would be the thing that would help you with those other things. So you could create a list of things you want to know, but you could also say, what do I need to learn to make organizing graduation better? What do I need to learn to make staffing more effective for next year? What do I need to learn to get prepared for next year's scheduling? Like all those things, you could start asking a different question. Instead of these just being tasks, you're coupling your one thing with the task that needs to be accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to that?
I like how that feels just thinking about it, because you're going to have to switch in between things based on, like you said, the seasons that you're in, but under the same premise of like, okay, coming in and learning something new every day, I can apply that to no matter what the situation is, what the, you know, thing is, even things that are really urgent or things not so urgent. I like that because it feels less like you're switching between priorities and changing your focus and having all these squirrel moments,
Hmm.
and having that one common focus of like, okay, this is one more thing I can learn, which is what I'm about right now.
Yeah. And you have to learn that anyway. And if you make it a priority and something to focus on that you do every single day, then you'll be looking for those moments also. And you'll be looking for opportunities to learn things, which when you're focused on it, then it becomes more manageable. It becomes more fun. It becomes more exciting when you do learn those things. And so, like, for example, with the sending kids home policy, like that is so mundane that maybe you shouldn't even be involved in that at all. But you have to be as the principal, right? And so, you knowing that now and understanding it and coming at it from a I'm here to learn something perspective rather than a you have to give me this information perspective, you come with a much different attitude and you present differently.
Yeah.
If you go back and replay that conversation with your nurse in your mind, how different would that be if you were coming at it from this is the thing I'm going to learn today?
I'm better at that in some situations than others. Because a lot of times I'll just tell people, hey, I'm sorry, I know we've talked about this or I've looked at that, but can we pull that up together? Can you walk me through that again? Remind me how that works? Because, the start of the year, like just meeting people as a new principal and all the things people tell you, it's like if you retain 1% of what you heard and saw that day, it was good.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's too much. It's like drinking from a fire hose, and you're not going to build all that instantly. But yeah, that's a better way to approach situations like that. I try, I can tell it's pretty easy to tell with staff and students and parents, like if whatever I think this thing is and how important it is really doesn't matter. You can tell if it's a priority to them, if they're really
Uh-huh.
upset or they're really excited and proud. It's like, hey, whoever you are, this is important to you, and I value that. So I try not to be, hey, I'm trying to have a focus on this, and here you are talking about that, because if it's
Yeah.
important to them, I want to know about it and hear about it and support them. So
Yeah. So learning, like that being your one thing, is just one thing that it could be. We could have gone down like 10 different paths, right? We could have looked
mhm.
at all these different ways that you could have done things. It could have been about making a new connection, that's your goal for your first year in a new school. It could have been about writing a heartfelt note to someone as a way to build relationships and culture. Like any of those other things would have been satisfactory. So I don't want you to walk away thinking, okay, it has to be learning. But what I do want you to do is go through that thought process that we went through of what is the thing that will make everything else easier or unnecessary. If you learn the right things, it will make other things easier or unnecessary. If you build positive relationships and write a heartfelt note, it will make difficult conversations and asking people to do things easier or unnecessary. If you make a deeper connection with one additional person, that will make things easier or necessary. There are a lot of different things that you could do in this season of your first year at a new school. Learning might be that thing, or it might not. And it doesn't matter. But the idea is that you go down deeper and deeper to figure out what the thing is that's actually going to pay some real dividends and make things easier or unnecessary. When it comes down to it, and the reason you were so successful at your previous school was that you knew what that one thing was after you had already been there a few years and you knew what you needed to do and you're able to do it. You're starting new, you're not quite ready for that yet, and it just takes time.
Yeah. And I get frustrated with myself when I have to back up, or I think I know where we're starting and then I find out we're not. And that's something that more important than like my priorities and my plan and my vision is like starting as a staff. You know, in my previous school, we all knew what the priority was, why it was a priority. We had spent time learning about it, trying things out. You know, there was that kind of cohesion where if we were going to do something, we all knew what we were going to do and why.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of turnover and new administrators, I just feel like we're way behind in that way, I guess.
Yeah, that could be the case, or it could be that you just haven't learned how to get those things to happen yet.
Yeah.
Or it could be that you just don't have the relationships to get that to happen yet. Or it could be that people just don't trust you enough. So you need to build that trust. So, there are all these different things out there that you could be focusing on. And at this stage, new in a district, what's the one thing that you really should be focusing on? And that's where I think you doing some thought work about that and trying to figure out what it is you need to be spending your time doing will be really powerful.
Yeah, it comes back to what Emily wrote in our Christmas card.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Eric is learning more than he is leading, which is
Yeah.
true, and she doesn't even work here and she knows that. So
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, this was a great conversation. As always, what was most valuable to you today?
framing how I prioritize things, starting as soon as I hang up and walk out of the office today.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate your time, and this is so much fun.
Yep. Thanks, Jethro. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.